What's going on, guys? It's Jamie, also known as the Photocommist, and as some of you guys may know, I was in Berlin, Germany this past weekend playing FIFA 19 on the full release of the game early, thanks to the EA Game Changers Network. It was a really fun time, amazing weekend, but in this video, I'm going to talk to you guys about sort of what I felt about FIFA 19. This is sort of going to be like a podcast style. I will have gameplay up in the background for you guys, but that's not really the focus of this video. I just kind of want to go through in sort of like an in-depth way how I felt about FIFA 19. I did get a chance to speak with the gameplay developers. They were there sort of taking our feedback, so that was really, really helpful, and I think I got a better understanding of the new features and how they're going to lay them out. And there are a lot of things I'll sort of level with you guys. There are a lot of things I'm really excited about and really hopeful for this year's gameplay, especially I think the gameplay is taking strides forward, but there's also a couple things that if they got the balancing wrong for it, it could be really tough and it's going to require a couple patches to fix. So the way I want to sort of structure it is we'll first go over the good things, then we'll go over the bad things, then we'll go over the ugly things. So yeah, let's just hop right into it. We'll start with some of their gameplay additions. The first one is the active touch system. Now, if you guys don't know, essentially they've added a bunch of different ways that you can take your first touch. Either like pressing RB and flicking your stick to the right, and where you can basically open up your body when you do it and give you sort of like a speed boost, like a half speed boost when you do it. You can flick your right stick up and really in any direction, and it flicks the ball up for you, and then you can do anything in the air with it. You can juggle it. You hit a volley. We'll talk about the volleys a little bit later. I think they might be really overpowered. I think that's something that the casuals, this active touch system, are really going to like. I think it adds variety to the gameplay. It sort of adds those potential for those exciting moments where you flick it up, hit a volley, or flick it up over your, a defender that overcommits. I think it could be really exciting, but I do think it might need a little bit of tweaking. We'll talk about that later. Another thing that they've added sort of as one of their marquee gameplay changes are the 50-50 battles. If you guys remember last year in FIFA 18, essentially when you engaged in a tackle or your defender committed to a tackle, it was sort of like this binary decision system on whether or not you were going to come away with the ball. They've changed that this year, and it's a good thing, right? I mean, they needed to change that. That's not how real football works. When you go into an engagement, the attacker is going to try and keep the ball, even if he's sort of dribbled into a tackle, right? He's going to change his body position and try and ride through that tackle. It's one of those things that should be determined by physics, and that's sort of the idea this year's. It's a physics-determined engagement now, so there's going to be a lot of things depending on how much you've powered up your tackle, the body positioning of your player as you go into the tackle, the body position of the attacker as you're going into the tackle, how far the ball is away, how far the defender has to lunge to get it. The physical stats of both players are also going to determine that. He actually said that things like strength, weight of the player, which is interesting. I didn't really know that was something that was so important. Aggression of the player are going to determine the likelihood that, for example, an attacker could dribble through an engagement and keep the ball on the other side, even if the defender made like a poke tackle to try and get it away. I think this is a good thing. This is something that needs to be added to FIFA because this is how real life football works, right? I mean, guys like Suarez, for example, are masters of this. You'll actually see them sort of go into tackles, realize that they're about to be tackled, and sort of put their legs together and jump through the tackle with the ball. And it's something that was sort of frustrating in FIFA 18 that there was really no variety in those animations, and now there are. And I think it adds, I'm hoping, and we'll talk about what could be the downsides of this later, and you guys are probably thinking about it right now, but there really is no user input that will make you more or less likely to come through the tackle as an attacker. The attacker just automatically adjusts his body positioning to make it so he is doing whatever he can to ride through the tackle, right? So that could worry you. It's supposed to be determined by stats and other things like that, but it could be worrying. And another thing that is a result of this is that you're not going to want to tackle as much anymore with your center backs in positions where they're the last man. Hummels is famous for saying if he's made a tackle, he's made a mistake. I think this year there's going to be more emphasis on positioning your defense and making tackles with your players that have support behind them, looking to make interceptions more than tackles. Another one of the additions that they've had moving on from the 50-50 tackles are the dynamic tactics. This, to me, is one of the biggest game-changing improvements that they've made this year. Totally revamped tactics, and I think it's going to have a huge impact. I mean, they've changed everything from you can customize how many people go into the box for corners and free kicks. You can separately adjust your width for your attack or your defense. You can now say how quickly you want to transition out of offense, and it actually does it. I mean, that's another thing too. Like these tactical adjustments, you can really see them actually have an effect on gameplay this year. For example, I was playing FUT Weekly Ben. It's probably the game you're actually seeing in the background right now, and I had originally set my formation to super wide, and because of that, my wingers were open every single time, and that was really tearing apart Ben at first, until he actually switched it so that his defensive width was really wide, and it completely countered that. My wingers were no longer open, and that was something that he did just by pressing his D-pad. And that's another thing. You can completely change your lineup. You can't make subs, but you can completely change where everyone is on the field just by moving your D-pad, and you can preset that, so you can have those all built in when you head into the game. I think that's a huge deal. Another thing that they did, and you might be thinking this as I'm explaining it, they've made it so that you can't just say you on defense you're super defensive, and then as soon as you get the ball, change over to an offensive tactic. They made it so that there's just a little bit of a delay when you do switch from, you want to switch tactics, right? So you can't just sort of abuse that mechanic in that way. I think this is going to be a big deal for competitive stuff, what to do in certain situations or how to counter certain tactics. I think this is going to be something that hopefully works on the pro scene in a good way and adds to the skill gap, but I think that's going to be sort of remain to be seen, and I think a lot of it's going to be determined by what sort of becomes the meta. Another thing they've added, and I'm sure you've heard a lot of buzz about this, is the timed finishing mechanic. I think this is another good thing. Some people are complaining about it, and I will say we'll talk about what could be sort of a downside of it in the bad section, but I think it's a good thing for now. It's going to add to the skill gap and the feeling of satisfaction that you get when you do complete a good shot, not this sort of random hit that you did that just happened to go in because the odds were in your favor at that time. It's something that the pros are probably going to get really good at, and I think the thing that's really interesting is that it's circumstantial, not the same amount of time in between every press of B as you might think it is. If you are dribbling slowly, for example, your time in between your first press of B and your second press of B is going to be much shorter than if you took a big touch out and you were outside the box and you have a running start to your second touch of B, or if you have a cross coming in, you press B for the first time, and then the second press of B is when you're just about to head it. Really difficult to adjust to it. I still suck at it, so I think it's something that's going to take time. It's another thing where you get really good at it. I've seen it. You can score some wonder goals with it, so it's pretty exciting. Free kicks are viable. Again, you can score from free kicks. I scored a couple. Pistol Pete, if you can hunt down the video, actually scored a free kick blindfolded. It was a little bit of luck, but it was actually kind of funny. The manual goalkeeper movement. You can move your goalkeeper now by pressing and holding in the right stick, and you can freely move the goalkeeper in any direction that you want. I think this is a huge deal. Again, I keep saying this buzzword, but for increasing the skill gap, for example, breakaways, which direction do you go? Fake to the right and go to the left, and how are you as the keeper? How are you faking to the right, or do you charge, do you not charge? I think it's going to be a really interesting level of skill if people start to get it down. To be clear, you can't actually trigger a save animation as you're controlling the keeper. You can just move him in a way that would position him better to make a save. Another thing that's really interesting about the manual goalkeeper movement is that you can use it on set pieces as well. So you can take him out and you can counter the near post corner cheese, if you will, which I think is definitely a good thing. Some of the new skill moves that they've added I think are class. The new fake shot skill move where you hold LB and do the fake shot is really overpowered right now because no one really understands the animation yet. It's sort of like this big speed boost. It's the equivalent to if you use the right stick to take a big touch. I think people are going to get used to it, so did not put that in the bad section. But the other one that I used that I thought was fun was the Iniesta skill move. It's like sort of this change lane skill move that you can trigger by pressing LB and then doing a regular ball roll. I really like that one. 180-degree passes are much harder now to do with players with low vision. The way that the gameplay developer described it to me, Sam, was that if a player with low vision tries to make a pass to a player that they haven't physically seen, there's a much higher degree of error that they can have, whereas a person with really high vision could make that pass with a much higher probability without looking at them. And they said the way that you're going to make that pass with a player with low vision would be to actually turn and look at them. There's this like, okay, you've looked at them for a second or two, now they can make that pass with a much higher degree of confidence. So I think that's something that hopefully will add personality to the game. Players like Cruz and Busquets, I mean, they say this every year, but players like Cruz and Busquets will hopefully be viable again in gameplay. A couple of things, like sort of minor stuff. Over-the-top through balls are much better now. They actually still play into space, which is, I think, a good thing in a way that makes sense. It's not overpowered, at least from what I've seen so far. The movement of goalkeepers has been symbolized on penalty kicks, which, like, thank God. The thing that annoyed me so much last year, go down for a dive, you guess the correct direction, but it would like slip under your body or like slip under the forearm of the keeper. That was so unbelievably infuriating when it just like the goalkeeper just fall down and the ball would like slip under his body. This year they've basically made it so that there's 3 ways you can guess: left, right, center. You're supposed to be able to get them in each quadrant depending on the stats of the goalkeeper and all these other things, how well the person shot it, how much power, but there isn't supposed to be any more manual input that you're supposed to give. I will say that the penalties are not completely fixed. We'll talk about that in a second. Another thing, they've actually said that they've increased the deceleration of defenders when you are controlling them manually, which is, I think, something that's a good idea. Something that was frustrating last year was it's very difficult to defend with a player manually, and there was more of a reward for controlling a player and sort of buzzing around while using the players that were sort of facing the ball and applying pressure to use them as the AI defenders, right? It was very, very AI centered, and it was something that could be done and a tactic that could be used by lower level players to sort of take advantage of the hefty AI defending that was available. This year, they've also said that they've made AI defenders much more likely to fall for quick changes of direction and skill move execution. Hopefully that is something that they follow through with and is actually balanced correctly, because that would be a positive. They've also said that there's going to be dedicated servers for division rivals, which is sort of their new version of divisions. We'll talk about division rivals in a bit. I do think it's a positive addition to the game. Another thing, this is just a minor thing, shots have like a more curl and dip to them, and you can watch them back on replays and look kind of cool. And then, obviously Champions League is going to be cool, but sort of just to wrap this section up, they seem to be listening to our feedback more. I'm going to cautiously say that, and I'm sort of putting it purposely as the last good and between the bad. There were a lot of things heading into this year, and even that are being shipped in this FIFA 19 build that didn't really seem to, they didn't really seem to listen to. But this year, at least, you could tell that they were actively taking a bigger role and are attempting to be more transparent with the community. One thing that they're going to be releasing is these things called pitch notes. They're essentially these write-ups on what the different stats mean, for example, and how the matchmaking happens in Weekend League, and how the division rivals matchmaking is going to happen, etc. I think that's something that's a positive step forward, and what the different stats mean, for example, what the hell does composure mean? Well, they're going to put that down on paper for us to actually understand as players. So hopefully that's a good thing. Stuff like at the feedback event, or at the capture event rather, we would make a suggestion and you would see a gameplay dev like take out his phone and write his notes app. So hopefully that's all stuff they're listening to. Speaking of feedback, let's get into some of the things that I thought were bad. This is sort of the section before the section where I talk about the ugly things. So while I do think, and I did not experience the kickoff glitch that much, right? The kickoff glitch, I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about, is that they sort of admitted that it was something that they had difficult adjusting to. The way that they sort of justified heading into this year without the kickoff glitch was that they adjusted the AI of the defense in general. They sort of overhauled the AI of the defense in general, and feel that after testing that it's going to be better. But it still worries me. People that know the gameplay better than I do have said that they've scored a couple of kickoff goals, and that worries me a little bit, because that is something that is sort of a sore spot for the community. Another thing is that auto lunges still exist. That is something that really frustrates me. If you're manually controlling a player, I don't think it should trigger animations, failing animations to try and intercept the ball. For those of you who don't know, last year in FIFA 18, as you were controlling a player manually, there was the potential for it, if a pass went by it would lunge out, trying to intercept that ball, and it would completely render that player out of the play for like 2 seconds, which is a lot of time in FIFA time, and you actually might as well just select a new player, because there's no way you were going to turn around and regain this person's momentum to go catch up to the play. They've added a setting where you can turn off auto lunges completely, but that turns them off for everyone, so including AI controlled players. If I were an EA developer, I would make it a way so you could turn off auto lunges for players that you are specifically controlling manually. That would make a lot more sense to me. Another thing that I'm nervous about is I think people might find a way to abuse the dynamic tactics. For example, the high pressure. Ben was down a game and we was down a goal, and he ended up putting on the high pressure tactics that he had set up, and it was really, really effective. I don't know if I just wasn't used to it, but it felt really, really strong, and his players kept buzzing around for something like 40 minutes or something like that now, and he ended up going back and equalizing. Whether or not that's going to be balanced by stamina remains to be seen, but I think it could be sort of a nervy sort of first couple months as the pro players really dig into it and figure out the ways to abuse the system. This is something I mentioned earlier, this next one. I think the flicks, the first touch flicks, are a little bit overpowered for two reasons. The first, it's really difficult to lock on to the ball as it's in the air. You can't actually lock onto it in a tackle when you press B. And if you do tackle in the direction of a player who has the ball flicked up in the air, you usually just foul them, which is kind of frustrating. And the second reason I think they're overpowered, I'll talk about in the ugly section. Another thing is the timed finishing. If there is any input lag, is going to be awful. For something that completely relies on having really precise input, that's something that makes me a little bit nervous. Another thing, this is something that people get sort of excited about, is there's no tournament modes as far as I know, and that's something that people really like, especially casual players, so it's a bummer that's not there. There's no FIFA Street as far as I could tell. That was something that a lot of people were kind of excited about, for the potential for it to be in the game this year, and there is no FIFA Street. Also, from what I've seen, the draft rewards haven't really changed that much, which is another bummer. Same thing with squad battle rewards. They haven't really changed that much. That's something that really frustrates me, especially the draft rewards. The idea that you can win the draft and still lose coins is like just baffling to me and really frustrating. Another thing is the unassigned glitch. It's still there. And the thing is, the kicker is they made it a lot easier this year. Again, I don't know if they're doing this on purpose or what, but you can actually buy an item and literally just press B, and you are back at the main menu. You can hop into the transfer market again and buy another item. And this is just a way that you can easily store thousands and thousands of cards. I really don't understand why it's still there. It's kind of strange. Also, I do have to give props. I forgot to mention this in the good section. They made it so that you can search for specific consumables now. For example, and I think they added this in the last game. You could search for a rare squad fitness and then a regular player fitness, but now you can do that for all types of consumables. But they haven't made it so that you can search for specific versions of an item of a player. I think that's something that is, in my mind, just I don't know why it's not there yet. If you could, say for example, Mertens has multiple informs, you still can't specifically search for his, say, third inform. As a trader, that's something that really matters to me. It just makes it really annoying to have to work against the system to get my buy now right. And now let's get into the ugly. The 50-50s. It's sort of interesting because I've put that in the good section, but I also think it could be really bad. If they don't balance this correctly, and you should be seeing a clip on the screen at the moment, I think it could be a really tough way to add to the feel of RNG in the game. By RNG, I essentially mean just like random outcomes. In the clip you're seeing right now, I had Maldini, arguably one of the best tacklers in the game, come against Pele, who again is probably one of the best players in the game, right? But I felt I made a very good tackle. I don't think I could have done a whole lot more in that situation to put in a better tackle, but you saw that Pele came away with the ball, and that was because he adjusted his body position at the last second to win the engagement and put the ball through my legs, went around me, and he was through on goal. He scored. So that's something you have to be watching out for and giving them active feedback, right? I mean, this is something that they said, yeah, they're going to be constantly adjusting it. So it's something that I think, at least for the start of the game, is worrying. Another thing, the power-up bar on penalties is broken. I think is the softest way to put it. Anything over a bar of power, and you'll shoot it like way over the net. I don't know why that's a thing, but it's really, really touchy. That's something that I think needs a little bit of adjusting. And then this next one, I know this hits home for a lot of people. Career mode and pro clubs. From what I've seen, I'm not an expert in either of those fields, and this is a lot from what I've heard as well. It just hasn't really gotten a whole lot of attention. I think that's a bummer. The guy from EA the other day said that the reason that they don't put that much attention to it is because it doesn't have the audience required for them to put it high on their list of priorities. Maybe it would be higher on the audience list if you guys put more attention to it and promoted it more and worked harder to add features to it every year so that people were more incentivized to go play it. I don't understand, particularly of pro clubs, why they don't put a lot more time and effort into it. I think pro clubs is in particular is a fantastic mode. Another thing, and this has to do with the first touch system, I think volleys are way too good. You can flick it up from almost anywhere with almost anyone, hit a volley that will go on target, and you don't even have to do the time shot system, but if you do, it's even higher chance of going in. I think that's something they definitely need to tweak, because I think the combination of you not being able to lock in on the ball while it's in the air and the fact that the shots seem really, really strong is something that could be rather worrying as we head into the first couple months of the game. Another thing, the weekend league, still 40 games. You guys know I'm not a huge fan of that. I understand that it's only for pro players, but even for pro players, that is a lot of games. I think they should, and I don't understand why they haven't done this, just transition into an ELO game. Make it so that if you have a high ELO, you then only match up with other people with high ELO. Like, to me, makes the most sense. Just make it so you have to match up against other people that are really strong. That's something that I have a tough time understanding. Maybe that's something server side that they can't figure out. I will say, as we're sort of on that topic, that Division Rivals I think is a really strong addition, and it's sort of this bridge between the casual and the pro player, because in it you can actually play weekend league games, and that will add to your My Division's points, if you will, that you use to accumulate points towards the weekly reward at the end of it. I think that's a solid addition. And then finally, the pack weight is tough. I'm gonna have a video coming out later this week talking about it, because I took a deep dive while I was at the event, but as just sort of like an anecdotal story, we were opening up on one of the last days of the event. We were just having a bit of fun recording a video with a bunch of people there. Our goal was to get an icon, and we went through $25,000 worth of FIFA points before we got an icon, which is 3 million FIFA points worth, which is pretty remarkable. And in that there was no Messi, no Neymar, no Ronaldo. In $25,000 worth of FIFA points, we didn't get a single icon, which is shocking. Anyway, time to sum everything up. Sort of on that sad note, I am really optimistic about the game this year. I think they've made a lot of strides in gameplay, and I think they've added a lot of things that are going to make the skill gap increased. I think some of the things with the new skill moves and the new first touch system that they've added, the 50-50s, are going to add variety to the gameplay. I think the dynamic tactics are really interesting. I think that's going to make watching pros play the game more interesting, which I think is something that's important not only for helping those pros create a career on Twitch, for example, but also just making gameplay on YouTube, for example, more entertaining to watch. As you get really good, I would imagine it gets even more entertaining. Overall, I'm really optimistic about the game. I'm excited for FIFA 19, and this event only got me more excited for it. I think the gameplay is fantastic. I'm excited to see how you guys react to the demo. But yeah, if you guys have any more questions about some of the things that I said in this video, please, let's start a discussion in the comments. I'll answer as much as I can. So if you guys did like this video, this sort of like, just podcast format, I would appreciate a like rating. If not, dislike rating is absolutely fine, but I do ask that you put in the comments why you didn't like it so I can improve in the future. Other than that, it's been Jamie, aka the Fun Economist. Keep your trade accounts full, stay rational, and I'll see you again in the next video.